Have you ever wondered if happiness after 65 is even possible? Does being alone feel like the world slowly forgetting you? What if the silence you dread could become the very space where joy begins? There was a time I believed happiness belonged to the younger years, that once the house emptied and companionship faded, joy would quietly exit too. I thought growing older alone meant fading into the background, like a story no longer being read. I carried that belief for years, until one quiet morning changed everything. In this video, I want to take you on a deeply personal journey to rethink what happiness can look like when life becomes still. Whether you're single, widowed, divorced, or simply watching your children build lives of their own far away, know this: you're not alone in feeling alone. From my own struggles to my friend Sarah's powerful transformation after enduring unimaginable loss, you'll see what it truly means to find peace and even happiness in solitude. These aren't just theories. They're practical, heartfelt steps anyone can take to turn quiet into clarity, loneliness into freedom, and stillness into strength. Stay with me until the very end, because the final truth I'll share could completely shift how you see your future. It's a truth I wish someone had told me sooner. Now, before we begin, I'd appreciate it if you could like this video. It helps us keep sharing these essential lessons about aging with grace and strength. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do so and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. If you enjoy this video, comment 1 below. If it didn't speak to you, comment 0. Your feedback helps me make this channel better for all of us. Let's begin. Being alone at 65 isn't something most of us prepared for. That morning, everything was still, eerily still. I sat with a warm cup of coffee in hand, staring through the window at the soft gray sky. The silence wasn't comforting. It was heavy. The kind of silence that creeps in slowly, wrapping itself around your shoulders, pressing into your chest, whispering reminders that no one is calling, no one is coming. It was in that moment that I understood I had a decision to make. I could sit and mourn the life I once imagined, the one with shared breakfasts, Sunday laughter, and someone to hold my hand at dusk. Or I could begin again, right from where I was. But let me be honest with you, choosing to rebuild didn't come with instant joy or a rush of motivation. There was no lightning bolt of inspiration, no magical moment of clarity. The reality is, being alone at this age is difficult. It's often unexpected, sometimes painful, and almost always misunderstood. And yet, it is also a beginning. We are rarely given the tools to navigate this stage of life alone. And I believe it's essential to say this out loud, to name what so many of us feel but keep buried in silence. Too often, we put on a brave face, nod politely through conversations, and pretend that everything is just fine. But behind the closed doors of our homes and hearts, a different truth often lingers. There's a quiet ache, a heavy sense of being unseen or even unworthy. Sometimes there's a shame that shouldn't belong to us, but still settles in. Society doesn't make it easy to grow older and be single. We live in a culture that glorifies youth, romance, and the image of a picture-perfect family gathered at the dinner table, laughing in harmony. You see it in commercials, in movies, and even in the casual chatter between friends at the cafe down the street. The message comes through loud and clear. Happiness is something you're supposed to share with someone else. Togetherness is celebrated. Solitude? It's something to fix or escape from, as if being alone means something has gone wrong. When you find yourself alone, whether from divorce, the loss of a partner, or simply the winding path life has taken, it's easy to internalize those ideas. You begin to question whether your solitude is your fault, as if it were a result of something lacking in you. I know this because I've lived it. That narrative sneaks in when you least expect it, especially in the quiet moments. It tells you you're somehow behind, somehow broken, or have missed your turn on the road to fulfillment. Well-meaning people have said to me, "You're so strong living on your own." And while the words are often offered with kindness, they carry an unspoken tone, one that suggests pity, as if being alone were a burden to bear rather than a valid and dignified chapter of life. That kind of thinking can wear you down. I won't pretend otherwise. There were days I questioned my own worth. I found myself replaying past decisions, wondering if they were missteps that led me to this quiet space. Was I too independent? Did I miss my moment? Was I meant to be alone? Or did I simply fail to hold on to something I should have? Those thoughts crept in when the evenings stretched long and the silence of the house became louder than any voice. And in those moments, doubt has a way of echoing, doesn't it? In those late night hours, when the house is still and the only thing moving is your mind, it's so easy to spiral. The world sleeps, but your thoughts won't quiet down. You start replaying your life like an old film. Every relationship, every choice, every word you never said, they all come rushing back under the unforgiving glare of hindsight. You wonder if you could have acted differently, spoken more boldly, loved more wisely. You ask yourself quietly, if I had been someone else, would the outcome have changed? And then, sometimes, an even darker question rises from the silence. Would anyone even notice if I faded away? If I skipped my daily walk, my trip to the store, my small routine moments, would it matter to anyone? That thought can hit like a wave, and I know its weight all too well. I've stood in that heavy place where doubt and isolation try to convince you that you're invisible. If you're standing in that place now, I need you to hear this clearly. You are not alone in feeling this way. And more importantly, being alone does not mean you are broken. Sit with that truth for a moment. Let it really settle in. Your value is not defined by who walks beside you. Your worth isn't measured by your relationship status or whether someone is waiting for you at the dinner table. Being alone does not mean you've missed your one chance at joy, purpose, or connection. It simply means that this chapter, this moment in your journey, is one that unfolds in solitude, and that in itself holds meaning. The truth is, no one hands you a manual for how to thrive when the life you imagined takes an unexpected turn. There is no GPS for navigating the quiet after a loss, a separation, or a change you never saw coming. But just because the path is unfamiliar doesn't make it any less sacred. It doesn't make your story any less valid, or your days any less important. The challenge isn't in being alone, it's in facing down the story we've been told. A story that whispers, you're only complete when you're with someone else. But where did that message come from? When did solitude shift from being a space for reflection and healing into something to be ashamed of? Ask yourself gently, when did we stop seeing time alone as a chance to reconnect with ourselves and start labeling it as failure? Think about everything you've lived through to arrive at this moment. Over the years, you've worn so many hats: mother, partner, friend, caregiver, professional. You've been the steady presence for so many, often without recognition, pouring your love, time, and energy into others without asking for much in return. You've faced struggles behind closed doors, fought battles no one else saw, and still got up the next morning and kept going. That kind of strength, it doesn't come from comfort. It comes from deep resilience. You've carried the invisible weight of responsibility, made sacrifices that changed the course of your own dreams, and built a life with your bare hands through seasons of joy, loss, and growth. And all of that, every step, every choice, every scar, is living proof of your worth. You've more than earned the right to feel whole, even in solitude. You deserve to stand tall in your own company, without needing someone else to validate your presence or complete your identity. But here's the thing. Society doesn't hand out medals for quiet courage. No one throws a parade when you choose peace over panic or when you navigate life's complexities on your own terms. So today, let me offer you something even more valuable than praise: permission. Permission to say, yes, I'm alone right now. And that's not only okay, it's powerful. Permission to let go of the guilt, the self-doubt, and the pressure to be somewhere you're not. There's freedom in that release. Something begins to shift when you stop viewing solitude as a sentence and start seeing it as an opportunity. As that internal judgment fades, the heavy comparisons begin to fall away too. You stop measuring your own life against someone else's highlight reel, their smiling family portraits, anniversaries, or carefully curated social media moments. And you come to understand something deeply freeing. Your path doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be valid. Your life, with all its unexpected twists and layered history, is already enough. You don't need to add or fix anything to make it meaningful. And in that moment of acceptance, something beautiful begins to emerge. A space to breathe again, to think clearly, to reflect on who you are, not just who you've been to others. A space where your voice gets louder than the noise of comparison, where your desires start to matter again. That space becomes a sanctuary, a foundation for something new, something rooted not in expectation, but in authenticity, something that finally feels like you. If you're still here, watching and reflecting, I'd love to know you're with me. Please comment number 1 below to let me know this message resonated with you. And thank you truly for sharing your time with me. The version of happiness we were taught often hinges on external symbols: being in a partnership, raising a family, living in a house filled with laughter and walls decorated with photographs of holidays, milestones, and smiling faces. But what happens when those markers begin to shift? What if they fade over time or never came to be the way you imagined? For much of my life, I subconsciously believed that my value was linked to my relationship status, that somehow, being single or alone in my 60s was a sign that I had fallen short. It was as if aloneness carried with it a shadow of incompleteness. But one day, something subtle began to shift inside me. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a quiet, steady change. It started the moment I stopped asking, "Why am I alone?" and began asking, what if this moment, this very season, is my invitation to become the most authentic version of myself? That single question, so simple, yet so powerful, planted a seed that would grow into something far deeper than I expected. It became the beginning of a journey to redefine happiness, not based on what I'd been told it should look like, but on what it could feel like. You see, society hands us a blueprint early in life: find a spouse, raise children, build a life that appears whole from the outside. Many of us follow that script faithfully for decades. Perhaps you did too, and maybe you still carry fragments of that life within you. A house filled with memories, creaking floorboards that echo the steps of those you once lived with, photo albums that hold the laughter and love of yesterday. But life, as we know, doesn't always stay within the lines of that original plan. Children grow up, start lives of their own, and sometimes drift far away. Partners may pass on, or relationships change in ways we never saw coming. Sometimes it's not a single dramatic event, but the quiet accumulation of years that pulls us into a different reality. And when that shift happens, grief often arrives uninvited. It's not just grief for those we've lost that stings the deepest, though that alone can be consuming. It's also grief for the version of life we thought we'd be living now, the version of ourselves we imagined we'd become. I've sat with that grief. I've felt its weight pressing in during the still hours when the world is asleep and the heart feels most exposed. But here's what I've discovered, something I hold close and now offer to you. Grief and growth are not enemies. In fact, more often than not, they walk hand in hand. And in that same breath, If you listen closely, something remarkable begins to emerge. Growth starts to whisper new possibilities. It gently nudges you toward a vision of happiness that no longer depends on someone else to complete you. Instead, it places you at the very heart of your own story, as the main character, not a supporting role. Here's a truth I wish someone had told me years, no, decades ago. Whether you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, you still have the power and the permission to completely redefine what happiness looks like. And here's the key. You don't need anyone's approval to do it. You don't need validation from society, from family, or from your past to create a life that feels nourishing today. Happiness doesn't have to mean a house full of chatter or a partner sitting beside you every evening. It doesn't have to be loud, social, or photo-worthy. Sometimes it's found in the quiet rituals of daily life, a morning routine that feels sacred, not rushed. Maybe it's the warmth of your favorite coffee in a mug that feels like it was made just for your hands. Perhaps it's the calm of reading a novel chosen simply because something about the title called out to you. Happiness might take the shape of kneeling in your small garden, brushing soil from your fingertips as you marvel at new life pushing through the earth. Or it may live in the hush of an early evening walk, when the air cools and the world slows, inviting you to notice the rustling trees, the rhythm of your breath, and the feeling of being grounded in your own presence. For some, happiness is finally booking that long-awaited trip, not for someone else's bucket list, but your own. No more waiting for the perfect time or right person to say yes. You become your own permission slip. For me, the turning point came when I began to tell myself the truth, gently but firmly, about what truly brought me joy and what quietly drained me. I started saying no to events or conversations that left me exhausted, even if that meant disappointing others or breaking long-standing habits. I stopped waiting for someone to accompany me to the places I longed to go. I began visiting museums alone, letting my thoughts wander as I lingered before paintings that stirred something inside me. I took myself out to dinner, not because no one else was available, but as a declaration that I was worth the experience on my own terms. I chose restaurants that delighted my senses and ordered dishes that brought me joy. I sat alone on park benches, listening to the layered melodies of birdsong and passing footsteps. And there, in that stillness, I stumbled upon a kind of peace I never knew I was missing. There is a quiet, steady joy that begins to grow the moment you stop fearing your own company. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It simply settles in, like the soft morning sun streaming through your window. Over time, I've come to understand that happiness isn't always found in grand, cinematic moments. More often, it's hidden in the small things, the way light filters through your curtains, the way your favorite song brings back a forgotten memory, the way silence wraps around you like a warm blanket instead of a cage. True happiness is often subtle. It's stitched into the ordinary days, in the gentle rhythms of a life that no longer requires performance. It's the peace of mind that comes when you're no longer striving to meet anyone's expectations. Not society's, not your family's, not even the ambitious younger version of yourself who dreamed of a perfectly mapped-out future. You wake up, stretch, breathe, and realize, I am not trying to prove anything. I am simply being. And somehow that is more than enough. Of course, let's not pretend the path is always sunny. There are still mornings when the silence feels a little too loud, afternoons when memories sneak in and tug at your chest, and evenings when the unknown stretches far ahead, wrapped in shadows. But now, instead of running from those moments, I try to greet them with understanding. I sit with them, let them speak, and then gently remind myself, this life, though different than the one I imagined, is not a void. It's a canvas. And every day, with every small choice, I am painting it into something real. Choosing to live fully on your own terms, in a world that constantly tells us we need someone to feel whole, is no small feat. It's radical, it's powerful, and yes, it takes courage. But the reward? It's profound. When you stop chasing someone else's version of joy, when you toss aside the script you were handed, something magical happens. You begin to uncover what truly stirs your spirit. That quiet longing buried beneath years of routine starts to breathe again. And that spark? Once it's lit, it doesn't just stay with you. It radiates. It attracts the people who truly see you, not the version you think you need to be, but the one you've become through all your experience and growth. It draws in connections, experiences, and quiet moments of alignment that feel real, not forced, not fleeting, but deeply, soulfully yours. In the next chapter of this journey, I'll walk you through the practical steps that helped me reclaim joy, habits that nurtured my spirit, passions I'd long set aside, and small, intentional decisions that reshaped my everyday life. But before we get there, as you continue on this journey, I'd love to hear from you. What does happiness mean to you, right now, in this season of life? Not what it meant 20 years ago, not what society told you it should be, but what it feels like to you, today, in this very moment. Take a quiet breath and ask yourself, what truly lights you up inside? Your answer might inspire someone else who's still searching. If you're still watching this video and finding these lessons helpful, please comment the number 2 below to let me know you're still here with me. Your time and presence mean more than you know. Once I gave myself permission to redefine happiness on my own terms, another question quickly rose to the surface. How do I make this new vision real? Not as some fleeting wish or idealized version of joy, but as something I can touch, feel, and carry with me in everyday life. I'll admit, at first I expected something dramatic, a life-changing moment, a reinvention, a grand gesture that would signal a fresh start. But that's not how it happened. The truth is, happiness didn't come with fireworks or sudden transformation. It tiptoed in quietly, through small, thoughtful choices. And those small steps, repeated with care, gradually wove themselves into the fabric of my days. Over time, they created something sturdy and meaningful. I discovered that joy doesn't always come from changing everything at once. More often, it comes from noticing and nurturing the quiet moments already within reach. I began with rituals, simple, personal acts that reminded me that my life still held beauty and purpose. Each morning, I made my bed with a sense of intention, smoothing the covers not just out of habit, but as a quiet promise to myself that the day mattered. I'd open the windows, no matter the weather, to let in fresh air and a little bit of the world. Even if I had no place to go, the breeze reminded me that I was still connected to something bigger. In the evenings, I lit a candle, not for company, not for an event, but just for me. The soft flicker brought a calm that seemed to whisper, "You deserve this peace." These may sound like small, even trivial actions, but they spoke volumes to my heart. They said, "Your life matters. Your space deserves light. You are worthy of care, even when no one is looking." And maybe that's where true happiness begins, with the moments when we choose to honor ourselves quietly, without performance, without expectation. With that in mind, would you like me to continue with the next part? And maybe that's where true happiness begins, with the moments when we choose to honor ourselves quietly, without performance, without expectation. With that in mind, would you like me to continue with the next part? I also became more intentional about how I spent my time and how those choices made me feel. I began asking myself a simple yet deeply transformative question. Does this energize me, or does it quietly drain me? That single question became a compass I returned to often, guiding me away from the noise and closer to the things that truly mattered. As I leaned into that awareness, I slowly released the obligations that no longer served me. I stepped away from endless committee meetings that felt more like performance than purpose. I politely declined social events that left me emotionally depleted rather than fulfilled. And in their place, I made room for the activities that sparked even the tiniest flicker of joy, curiosity, or peace. This shift wasn't about being selfish. It was about finally honoring my own energy and emotional needs, something I had spent a lifetime putting last. One of the most freeing choices I made was to reconnect with a hobby I hadn't touched in decades: painting. Now, let me be clear, I wasn't painting for an audience, and I certainly wasn't aiming for a gallery. I wasn't particularly skilled, and that didn't matter in the slightest. Embracing the mindset of a beginner was, in itself, a beautiful revelation. I painted for the simple pleasure of it, for the meditative calm that settled over me as colors blended together and the brush danced across the canvas. In those quiet, unhurried hours, I reawakened parts of myself that had long been buried. I met the playful, curious, creative woman who still lived inside me, just waiting for an invitation to return. But your joy may not be found in front of an easel, and that's perfectly okay. Perhaps it comes from your hands in the earth, gently tending a garden and coaxing green life from the soil. Or maybe it's in the quiet rhythm of journaling, where you allow your thoughts to flow freely onto paper without judgment. It might be found in the comforting ritual of baking, the smell of warm bread filling your kitchen, or in dancing alone to songs from your youth, reclaiming a piece of yourself with every step. Maybe for you, joy means learning something new: photography, pottery, a foreign language, something that lights a small spark inside, even if no one else sees it. The truth is, the specific activity doesn't matter. What matters is the why behind it. When you give yourself permission to engage in something simply because it makes you feel alive, you're doing more than chasing joy. You're practicing deep self-respect. You're reminding yourself that your time, your interests, your emotional well-being, they all matter. You are not just filling your days. You are crafting a life that reflects your truth, one deliberate, joyful choice at a time. It all began with one essential realization. True happiness revolves around your own heart, not around what's absent from your life. That shift in perspective opened the door for another powerful step, challenging myself to move beyond my comfort zone, even when I didn't quite feel prepared. One day I joined a local book club. It wasn't out of desperation for company or to chase away loneliness. I joined because I missed deep conversation, fresh ideas, and the joy of learning from others who shared that same passion. I'll admit, walking into that room alone felt intimidating at first. I worried I wouldn't belong, or that I might look awkward surrounded by strangers who all seemed to know each other. But something happened over time. I began to understand that simply showing up for myself, stepping forward and engaging with the world on my own terms, was infinitely more empowering than shrinking back in fear. Each gathering became a small victory, not just socially, but emotionally. That one choice led to unexpected doors opening. It began with casual coffee meetups after meetings, followed by friendly conversations during neighborhood art walks. Eventually, it brought me to volunteer at a local animal shelter. There, in the quiet moments of brushing a cat or walking a gentle old dog, I found something profound: purpose. A simple, meaningful sense of being needed and useful, without pretense or pressure. I hadn't set out with a grand plan to build a new community, but by following the small things that genuinely spoke to my spirit, I stumbled into one. That's the magic of nurturing your joy. It creates a ripple effect. People with kindred values and open hearts are drawn to authenticity. And when you're living in a way that aligns with what truly matters to you, connections seem to bloom effortlessly. There's no need to force them. This isn't about keeping yourself busy just to avoid feeling empty. It's not about filling your calendar to escape solitude. No, this is about being intentional. Choosing how to spend your energy in ways that reflect who you are, what you believe in, and what genuinely lights you up. Even if no one else fully understands your path, that's okay. It's yours. When you begin to prioritize what matters to you, without apology, your life starts to transform, not overnight, but steadily, meaningfully. The world around you begins to shift, and the people and moments that come into your life feel more vibrant, more aligned, more real. If there's one piece of wisdom I'd like you to take with you, it's this. You don't need to have everything perfectly figured out in order to begin. You simply need the courage to start. One small step is all it takes to move toward a life that feels like your own. Start this week with one simple intention. Choose something small that brings you peace or sparks a sense of curiosity. Maybe it's brewing your favorite cup of tea and truly sitting with it. No distractions, just the warmth in your hands and the calm in your breath. Perhaps it's signing up for a class that excites you, or taking a gentle walk through a quiet park where the trees whisper their stories. Whatever it is, commit to it. Make it part of your rhythm. These tiny, quiet investments in your well-being, often overlooked, are the very foundation of a joyful and grounded life. If you're still here with me, and these insights are resonating with you, please take a moment to comment the number 3 below. That lets me know you're still watching and walking this journey with me. I truly value your presence. Let's now talk about something that's often ignored until it can't be. The connection between joy and your physical and mental well-being. Because the truth is, you could have all the free time in the world. You might be surrounded by opportunities, enrolled in every club, and booked for lunches and hobbies every day of the week. But if your body feels tired and your mind is burdened with stress or anxiety, joy can feel just out of reach, like a sunset you can see but can't quite touch. This was a hard truth I had to learn firsthand. It reshaped the way I live and how I now prioritize my health. For the longest time, I thought I had the right formula. I stayed active in my community, showed up to every event, and kept myself constantly engaged. To the outside world, I looked like the picture of thriving. I was connected, social, and always in motion. But underneath that busy schedule, I was ignoring the one person who mattered most: myself. Living alone, it's easy to fall into patterns without even realizing it. With no one else in the house, structure slowly fades. There's no gentle reminder to prepare a nourishing meal, no voice nudging you to take a walk or step away from the screen. I wasn't stretching regularly, skipping meals here and there, and often pushing through fatigue, thinking that staying busy was the answer. But the truth? I was running on empty. And joy doesn't live there. It lives where the body feels strong and the mind feels at ease. Without those small, gentle reminders, I slowly drifted into habits that left me feeling drained, both physically and emotionally. When you're living alone, it's incredibly easy for self-care to slip through the cracks. The days begin to blend into one another, a quiet blur where nothing feels distinct. You might skip breakfast simply because preparing it feels like too much effort. Hours can pass in stillness, not the peaceful kind, but a stagnant stillness where you're sitting for too long, lost in thought or numbed by distractions. And then there's the silence. It begins softly, even soothing at first. But over time, that silence can become thick, heavy, almost deafening. It presses in on you, turning what once felt like solitude into something more isolating. I've lived through mornings when just lifting the blanket and placing my feet on the floor felt like an enormous task. Evenings would arrive with a kind of hollow quiet that echoed through the rooms, making it hard to hear even my own thoughts clearly. It wasn't sadness all at once. It was a fog, an emotional weight that settled in slowly, obscuring any sense of joy I once knew. In those moments, happiness felt like a distant memory, like it belonged to someone else entirely. But what eventually pulled me out of that fog wasn't one grand, life-changing decision. There was no lightning bolt, no dramatic turning point. It was the small, deliberate acts of care, tiny, almost insignificant at first, that became the thread I held onto. And slowly, that thread led me back to myself. One of the first things I did, I started drinking more water. It sounds too simple, I know, But staying hydrated gave my body an unexpected clarity, a lightness that I hadn't realized I was missing. That small act felt like a victory. It didn't change everything, but it sparked momentum. Next came short walks, just 10 minutes around the block. I wasn't trying to hit a step goal or meet some fitness milestone. I walked simply to prove that I could show up for my body, even on days when motivation was nowhere in sight. Those walks became something more than exercise. They were a quiet ritual, a daily reminder that I mattered. And from there, I began paying closer attention to my meals, not in a restrictive, punishing way, but with gentle awareness. I started to ask myself, what would nourish me today? What would make me feel good? Not just full, but truly supported. That shift in intention made all the difference. I began showing myself more kindness. One of the first steps was trading processed snacks for whole foods, vibrant fruits, fresh vegetables, and home-cooked meals made with care. Cooking for one used to feel like a lonely chore, something to rush through or skip altogether. But over time, I started to view it differently. Preparing a meal became a quiet ritual, a gesture of self-respect. I realized I was worthy of the effort it took to nourish myself well, and so are you. These small choices weren't only about physical health, they were deeper than that. They were about taking back control, about reclaiming a sense of agency in a life that had, at times, felt adrift. Because when you live alone, caring for your body matters, but caring for your mind, that becomes even more essential. With all the quiet time that solitude brings, your thoughts can either become your sanctuary or your storm. I started to notice how often my mind turned against me with a steady hum of self-criticism. The voice wasn't always loud, but it was persistent. Thoughts like, "You're falling behind," or "No one really notices you," crept in and made themselves at home. Little by little, they chipped away at my confidence and cast shadows over my sense of worth. Recognizing this pattern, I made a conscious choice to change it. I didn't try to overhaul everything at once. I simply began by writing down 3 things I was grateful for each morning. Just 3. Some days, it was the comforting steam rising from my cup of coffee. Other days, it was the chirping of birds outside my window or a kind smile from someone at the grocery store. These tiny acknowledgments anchored me. They helped me see the beauty in the moments I'd overlooked. I also began to gently challenge the harsh thoughts that surfaced. Instead of saying, "You should have done more by now," I began whispering to myself, "You're doing your best, and right now, that's enough." I started speaking to myself the way I would to someone I love, with patience, encouragement, and tenderness. That shift in inner dialogue may sound small, but it changed everything. It reshaped how I viewed myself, how I moved through the world, and how I received each new day. Another key habit I nurtured was making time for true stillness. Not the kind of stillness that numbs, like zoning out in front of a screen, but a kind that reconnects. I'd sit quietly, close my eyes, and simply follow the rhythm of my breath. Some might call it meditation. For me, it was something simpler, but just as profound. It was returning to myself, if only for a few minutes each day. Those quiet moments, when I simply sat in stillness and reconnected with my breath, became vital. They weren't dramatic, but they helped me return to myself. In that silence, I could sift through my emotions, unravel my tangled thoughts, and find calm in a world that often felt overwhelming. That's the beauty of presence. It doesn't demand perfection, only your attention. We often think of self-care as something glamorous, reserved for vacations or indulgent spa days. But in truth, it lives in the smallest, most ordinary choices. It's in choosing water over soda, taking a walk around the block instead of staying on the couch for another hour, turning off the television early and allowing your body to rest. These moments are quiet acts of devotion to your well-being. Self-care also means learning to protect your peace. That might look like setting boundaries with people who leave you emotionally drained, or giving yourself permission to say no when your energy is running low. It's about noticing the signals your body and spirit are constantly sending. Are you tired, stiff, lonely, anxious? When you start paying attention and responding with compassion, something powerful shifts. You begin to trust yourself again. Of course, this journey isn't free of struggle. There will be days when old habits resurface, when the fog of fatigue or sadness rolls in, and when being alone feels heavier than usual. That's natural. But each time you make a loving choice, drink that glass of water, stretch your legs, quiet your mind, you're building resilience. And over time, those small actions become anchors. They stabilize you. They give you clarity. They strengthen your spirit. Hydration, movement, nourishment, stillness, self-kindness, these are not luxuries. They are lifelines. And when practiced regularly, they help you face loneliness without feeling lost. They make it possible to connect with others from a place of authenticity rather than need. They create a space inside you where joy can quietly return and begin to grow again. As we continue, I'd like to share a story that has stayed with me for years. It's the story of my dear friend Sarah and how she slowly and bravely rebuilt her life after experiencing an unimaginable loss. Her journey is a powerful reminder that even in the shadows of grief, joy can find its way back, not as a replacement for what was lost, but as a new chapter written with courage, purpose, and love. Let me introduce you to Sarah, a woman whose resilience and quiet strength have etched a lasting impression on my heart. She was married to Mark, her high school sweetheart, for over 4 decades. For 41 years, they built a life together, one filled with laughter, shared memories, and the ordinary, beautiful routines of a long partnership. They raised 2 children, tackled career changes, moved across several states, and celebrated countless milestones. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, each one stitched into the fabric of their life like cherished threads. Of course, it wasn't all easy. They weathered storms too, financial setbacks, medical scares, and all the unspoken challenges that come with the territory of a long marriage. But through it all, their bond remained steady. Mark was Sarah's anchor, her safe harbor, and her closest friend. Their relationship wasn't just a part of her life, it was her life's foundation. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed. Mark passed away suddenly, and in that moment, Sarah's world tilted off its axis. The shock was immense. At first, she did what so many of us do when grief comes crashing in. She kept moving. She vacuumed the floors, answered the endless calls and messages, organized the memorial, and gracefully accepted casseroles and flowers from well-meaning neighbors. But then, the noise faded. The calls slowed. The steady stream of visitors disappeared. And in that stillness, Sarah found herself sitting in the middle of a quiet house that once felt warm and full but now echoed with absence. One afternoon, she sat by the window, watching the wind move through the trees, and she said something to me I'll never forget. "It's not just that Mark is gone. It's that I don't know who I am without him." That kind of grief doesn't always announce itself with tears or breakdowns. No, it arrives in softer, lonelier ways. In the quiet when dinner is for one. In the missing laughter during a familiar television show. In reaching across the bed and finding only stillness. It's the pain of absence tucked into life's smallest corners. The ache of knowing there's no one left who instinctively knows your schedule, your quirks, or what makes you laugh without saying a word. There was no one calling her name in the morning anymore. No one to listen to the little things. What she had for breakfast, a funny moment from the grocery store, or how the flowers were finally blooming in the front yard. For Sarah, that silence was louder than any noise. It wasn't just the absence of Mark. It was the absence of being witnessed, of being known so deeply and so fully that even the smallest moments mattered to someone else. The weight of that loss wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, a slow, steady heartbreak that touched every part of her identity. It reshaped how she saw herself and how she moved through the world. But here's the thing. Sarah's story doesn't end in that chair by the window. She gave herself permission to grieve, fully and without apology. She didn't try to rush past the pain or pretend to be okay when she wasn't. She let herself feel it all, the sorrow, the longing, the confusion. And then, not because she suddenly felt strong or brave, but simply because something deep inside her said it was time, she made a quiet but powerful choice. She chose not to move on, as if Mark's presence could be erased, but to move forward, carrying his love like a steady flame while also making space for something new. One soft morning, she signed up for an art class at the local community center. She hadn't touched a paintbrush in over 3 decades, but something inside her, an old, buried spark, nudged her to try. Walking into that studio for the first time was terrifying. Her hands trembled, her heart raced. She felt exposed, uncertain, like a beginner in a world that had kept moving while she stood still. But as she dipped her brush into paint and spread color across the canvas, something remarkable happened. A sense of peace washed over her. In that simple act of creation, she found a small measure of control, a whisper of joy. When so much had been taken from her, she was making something beautiful. And that mattered. That weekly class became her sanctuary, a space where grief and healing could sit side by side. The more she painted, the more she felt connected to herself again. Encouraged by this small but meaningful shift, Sarah decided to say yes to another invitation. She joined a book club at the local library. At first, she sat quietly, listening more than speaking. The faces were unfamiliar, the stories foreign. But week by week, things began to change. The circle of strangers grew more familiar. Conversations flowed more easily. Laughter returned. And one afternoon, after a meeting filled with thoughtful discussion and warm tea, a kind woman from the group asked Sarah if she'd like to volunteer at the local animal shelter. Sarah wasn't sure if she had the energy, or even the heart, to say yes to that invitation. Weekends had become heavy, slow, and predictable. But something inside her, a quiet flicker of curiosity and the deep desire to keep moving forward, urged her to go. And so she did. What started as a hesitant step soon became part of a rhythm that gently pulled her out of isolation and back into the world. Today, Sarah still lives in the same home she once shared with Mark. The walls hold memories, and so does her heart. She speaks of him often, sometimes with a soft, wistful smile, other times with tears that surprise her in their suddenness. But what stands out the most is that she isn't trying to replace the space he left. She knows that's not possible. Instead, she's doing something even more courageous. She's learning how to live alongside her grief. She's crafting a new chapter that honors the love they shared while making space for the present moment. Now, her Sundays look quite different. They're often filled with bold, expressive strokes of paint as she loses herself in creativity. She leads a thoughtful discussion circle at the local library, where her insights spark laughter, debate, and a sense of connection among those gathered. And at the animal shelter, there's a one-eyed cat named Toby who has decided that Sarah is his person. He trails after her with loyal steps, as if he too knows she's someone special. When Sarah shares that story, her laughter is rich and unguarded, the kind that bubbles up from someone who has truly made peace with her pain. It's the sound of a woman who has allowed sorrow to walk beside joy, and in doing so, has found both strength and serenity. Her journey reminds us of something essential. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's not about pretending the loss didn't matter, or that the hurt never happened. True healing means allowing yourself to feel the full weight of what you've lost, while still choosing to make space for new experiences, new relationships, and new versions of yourself. Being alone doesn't mean the story is over. In fact, it may mean that a whole new chapter is waiting, one where you become the main character. So many of us grow up believing that the best parts of life happen when we're young or when we're surrounded by others. But Sarah's story teaches us a different truth. Some of life's most profound and soul-stirring moments can come later, when you've weathered the storm, rebuilt your sense of self, and finally allowed yourself the permission to live, not for anyone else, but fully and unapologetically for you. And if you're watching this, quietly wondering if happiness is a privilege that belongs to someone else, let Sarah's journey whisper a gentle truth. It's not too late, and you're not too far gone. Let Sarah's story serve as a quiet beacon, a reminder that hope and healing aren't reserved for the extraordinary. She's not a superhero. She's a woman like so many of us, navigating loss, facing uncertainty, and choosing courage over despair, one small intentional step at a time. There was no grand transformation, no sudden breakthrough, but through those consistent choices, she began to weave a life that feels vibrant, authentic, and deeply her own. And wherever you are on your journey, whether you're standing at the edge of something uncertain or slowly making your way back to yourself, I want you to remember this. Your story isn't over, not by a long shot. You have the power to take the next step, no matter how small, and move toward a heart that feels full again. So here we are, reaching the end of this video, but perhaps standing at the threshold of a brand new chapter in your life. If you're 65, 75, or beyond, please know this. Being alone doesn't mean you've been left behind. It means you've been given the space, the time, and the freedom to write a chapter that reflects who you truly are, on your own terms. Happiness isn't something that lives only in your past, or something reserved for others. It's alive in every small, courageous decision you make today. Whether it's choosing to nurture your body, open your heart, or simply sit quietly with yourself without judgment, those are acts of love, and they count. I'd truly love to hear from you. What resonated with you most in this video? What's one thing, just one, that you'll take with you and try in your own life starting today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might be the very spark someone else needs to move forward. If this video has touched you, please take a moment to leave a comment, like, and share it with someone who may need to hear these words. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Healthy Aging Blueprint, for more heartfelt conversations about healing, growth, and rediscovering purpose in this beautiful chapter of life. Wishing you health, happiness, peace, and remember to subscribe to Healthy Aging Blueprint. Take good care.